Across the country, protests were held outside of Tesla dealerships in opposition and in support of Elon Musk.
Protests are happening as we speak across the country as part of a global day of action against Elon Musk and his Tesla empire.
My companies are suffering because I'm in the government. You just pointed that out a moment ago.
Right.
Do you think it helps sales if dealerships are being firebombed? Of course not.
Movement of anger and hate, a wave of anti-Elon Musk protests erupting across America. It happened all during the weekend as left-wing protesters targeted over 200 dealerships, showrooms, and charging stations under the banner of Take Tesla Down.
The fact that we are where we are, where are we in 5 years? Where are we in 10 years?
I do think there's the potential for a great future, so long as America remains the land of freedom and opportunity.
What if the Trump administration's 25% tariff on imported vehicles isn't merely about protecting American manufacturing, but instead represents a calculated geopolitical chess move with implications far beyond the automotive sector? The White House has framed this decision as an economic necessity, projecting an impressive $100 billion in annual revenue from these tariffs, scheduled to take effect in April. This substantial figure serves as the administration's primary justification for what many consider a dramatic protectionist pivot in American trade policy. In a Montreal Tesla dealership, the scene was chaotic. Dozens of vehicles deliberately defaced in what investigators described as politically motivated vandalism. Local witnesses connected the destruction directly to Elon Musk's political alignments and the escalating trade tensions between the US and Canada. As similar incidents spread across Canadian cities, they reveal a deeper narrative about how Trump's 25% automotive tariff has transformed from economic policy into cultural flashpoint. The $42 billion Canadian retaliation package now being prepared represents a relationship fracturing before our eyes, with Tesla, BYD, and a new Mexican EV startup caught in the crossfire of international trade conflicts.
America's protectionist pivot, the strategic logic behind Trump's 25% tariff.
Behind the public rhetoric of manufacturing protection lies a more complex reality. The administration champions these tariffs as vital for American industrial security, yet economic analyses reveal potential self-inflicted wounds. American automakers with domestic production facilities rely heavily on global supply chains, sourcing critical components from international partners, creating a double-edged sword that both shields and potentially harms domestic industry. As this tariff was announced, the markets reacted like a finely tuned engine misfiring. General Motors shares plummeted nearly 8% the morning after the announcement, while Ford and Stellantis, parent company of Jeep and Chrysler, experienced declines of 3% and 4% respectively. This negative reaction from investors signals serious apprehension about disruption to established business models and supply networks optimized over decades of globalization. In Hildegard Muller's stark view, these tariffs were set to ignite a domino effect through every layer of the global supply chain. The president of the German Automotive Industry Association warned that these measures would negatively impact automakers and all companies in the global supply chain, with consumers in North America ultimately bearing significant costs. The timing of this announcement reveals much about its strategic dimensions. Coming amid increasingly tense trade negotiations with multiple partners, particularly Canada, the tariff declaration appears designed to create leverage. The administration explicitly warned that if the European Union collaborated with Canada to circumvent these measures, it would face much larger penalties than currently planned. Language that sounds more like diplomatic pressure than economic policy. The selective application of these tariffs, targeting specific trading partners, while potentially exempting strategic allies, suggests the administration is using these measures as both carrot and stick in broader international negotiations. The explicit mention of protecting US-made cars, particularly Tesla, indicates specific corporate interests may have influenced this policy's design. The fundamental question emerges: do these tariffs represent a temporary negotiating tactic or signal a permanent shift in American trade philosophy? The evidence suggests both interpretations contain elements of truth. While clearly intended as leverage in ongoing negotiations, the scale of these measures indicates a willingness to fundamentally alter established trade relationships in pursuit of perceived national advantage. Despite creating immediate market turbulence, these tariffs strategically position American manufacturers for potential long-term advantage while simultaneously generating significant negotiating leverage.
Canada's $42 billion counterpunch. Anatomy of a retaliatory package.
While the U.S. administration gambles on leveraging tariffs for strategic advantage, Canada has quietly assembled its own high-stakes response, a $42 billion economic counterpunch that represents the largest trade retaliation in Canadian history. This unprecedented package signals a fundamental transformation in North American economic relations, with America's traditionally most reliable ally now methodically identifying economic pressure points across the U.S. landscape. Behind closed doors in emergency cabinet meetings, Prime Minister Carney and his senior officials have crafted a response that transforms the relationship between longtime partners. The Prime Minister's declaration that the old relationship with the United States is over marks a seismic shift in diplomatic language, reflecting genuine concern over the trajectory of bilateral economic integration. This represents a Canadian reassessment of its most crucial international relationship. Canada's potential $42 billion response operates with surgical precision. Like a targeted missile strike, Canadian officials have mapped vulnerabilities across America's economic landscape. They've identified politically sensitive industries concentrated in electoral battleground states. Agricultural products from the Midwest, manufactured goods from Pennsylvania and Michigan, and technology services from West Coast states all feature prominently in the retaliatory framework. Economic projections suggest these countermeasures could impact over 250,000 American jobs across targeted sectors, with particularly acute effects in politically contested congressional districts. The Canadian strategy creates maximum political pressure while minimizing disruption to its own economy. By focusing on goods with readily available alternative suppliers, Canada maintains leverage without significantly harming domestic consumers. The manufacturing hub of Windsor, Ontario, directly across from Detroit, illustrates the stakes. Local auto parts suppliers have already begun exploring alternative supply chains to Asia and Europe, anticipating prolonged trade tensions. As economic pressure intensifies, Canada's actions against Tesla demonstrate its hardening stance. In a calculated diplomatic maneuver, Canadian Transport Minister Chrystia Freeland ordered the exclusion of all Tesla vehicles from future participation in the country's rebate program, a deliberate political statement connecting directly to the broader trade dispute. Canadian authorities also froze $43 million in EV rebates already earmarked for Tesla vehicles, citing concerns over the automaker's applications submitted before the program's conclusion. This demonstrates Canada's willingness to target specific American companies in response to trade tensions. International reactions have been swift. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva expressed fears that U.S. actions would damage free trade and weaken multilateralism. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen shared similar concerns, pledging to protect European stakeholders from this escalating trade war. The structure of Canada's retaliatory package reveals sophisticated understanding of America's economic and political pressure points. By targeting industries with strong lobbying presence in Washington, Canadian officials are mobilizing domestic American opposition to the tariff policy. This approach leverages internal U.S. political divisions to create resistance against the administration's trade stance.
The EV battlefield, Tesla, BYD, and Mexico's Olinia project.
Beyond the diplomatic posturing and retaliatory measures, a transformative power struggle is unfolding in the electric vehicle market. Three companies with vastly different trajectories now find themselves at pivotal positions in this North American trade conflict. Tesla faces mounting political challenges despite potential tariff advantages. BYD consolidates its global dominance, and a nascent Mexican venture waits in the wings, poised to capitalize on the very trade barriers meant to exclude foreign competition. Tesla's position epitomizes the complexity of this trade war. While the American manufacturer theoretically stands to benefit from tariffs aimed at foreign competitors, its global operations and controversial leadership have created unexpected vulnerabilities. The company's exclusion from Canadian EV incentives reveals a deeper political dimension to what initially appeared to be purely economic policy decisions. The timing coincides conspicuously with Musk's infamous "DEI is anti-excellence" tweets and vocal Trump support, alienating key allies precisely when Tesla's global market position faces unprecedented challenges. The legal landscape offers Tesla limited recourse. The Canadian government's resolute stance makes a favorable outcome highly improbable. This regulatory setback forces Tesla to reconsider its North American strategy at a critical juncture. Meanwhile, BYD has emerged as the stealth competitor that quietly redefined the rules of the electric vehicle game. The Chinese manufacturer has surpassed Tesla in critical metrics, generating more revenue in the third quarter of 2024 and delivering more fully electric vehicles in the fourth quarter, a clear signal that the competitive landscape has fundamentally changed. BYD's ascendance stems from a meticulously executed expansion strategy targeting regions where Tesla maintains limited presence. By focusing on Latin America and Southeast Asia with more affordable models, BYD has built a formidable market position outside Western economies. This diversified geographic approach provides substantial insulation from North American trade tensions, while simultaneously applying competitive pressure on Tesla globally. As these established giants clash, an underdog story emerges from the shadows of these titanic trade disputes. Mexico's Olinia project represents a bold attempt to develop a domestic electric vehicle industry designed specifically for an increasingly fragmented North American market. With plans to launch in 2026, the project aims to produce vehicles comprised almost entirely of Mexican components, potentially circumventing the very tariff barriers being erected between its northern neighbors. By positioning itself as a response to Mexico's clean electricity goals and the growing presence of imported Chinese vehicles, now accounting for nearly 10% of new car sales in Mexico, the venture aligns with both environmental policies and nationalist economic interests. If successful, Olinia could reshape regional supply chains, offering a third path that neither American nor Chinese manufacturers have anticipated. Significant obstacles remain, including budget constraints, an underdeveloped lithium industry, and an ambitious timeline. Yet the project's regionally integrated approach may prove prescient if current tensions persist or escalate. Beyond numbers and policies, we're witnessing a tectonic shift in how nations approach manufacturing and global interdependence. The fracturing of decades-old supply chains represents a fundamental change in North American manufacturing philosophy. As production relocates behind national borders, increased costs could impede electric vehicle adoption just as the industry reaches critical mass. This conflict foreshadows the future of industrial policy globally. Nations face the challenge of balancing domestic job creation against the efficiencies of international collaboration. The approach that prevails will define automotive production and entire industrial sectors for generations, potentially reshaping globalization into a more regionalized economic order, where borders are once again drawn across once seamless supply chains.